Hey, how you guys doing? Alrighty, let's get started. I'm going to go over some of the questions from the midterm review. The sub, Mr. Rippert, has an answer key, and there's some of you in class that know this material very well, and I expect you guys to help each other. I'm just going to highlight some key things throughout the review. The answers will be available. I really need you to watch the Delta Math video. Take good notes. It has more information than what's been taught, but it'll all go in and make sense. So you have to do the work, and I'm sure you'll be rewarded on the exam for doing the best job you can. All right, so let's get started. On the semester exam review, they're showing me counterclockwise, and they're showing me clockwise. If they're showing me counterclockwise and clockwise, then we need to be very careful because it's going to be on the exam. Don't forget that 90 degrees counterclockwise is equal to 270 clockwise, and vice versa. 270 counterclockwise is equal to 90 degrees clockwise is equal to 270 counterclockwise. Looking at the example in number 1, triangle DEF is rotated onto ABC. And if you look at the rule, we can see that it's switch and change the first, which is 90 degrees counterclockwise, which just simply puts me here. And then if you look at the rule on the next one, it's switch and change the second, which is 270, which would come around and put me here. And then the last one's 180 degree rotation, which would take me 180. So that's simply from here across. Okie dokie. Those aren't that hard, but you have to know the rules. On this next one, the key is to understand that there's 180 degrees in a triangle and that we have to use alternating interior angles here and here to bring that angle into the triangle so that we end up with a triangle up here. And now we have two angles in the triangle, 25.8, which they give me here, 30.2, which I found using alternate interior angles, and then we end up subtracting that from 180 to get the 124. The next thing we have to know is that 124 is supplementary to 56 degrees. And I did that down here. Not difficult, but you have to look past the scary and concentrate on what we know. Always remember 180 degrees inside of a triangle and look for supplementary angles that add up to 180 degrees. On number 4, we have parallel lines. Parallel lines cut by a transversal. We end up with alternating interior angles, which we will get all the time. The other key to this problem is that this angle is 90. This angle is 90. That means that those two pieces at the top are complementary. Make sure that you remember the words complementary. And that means that they add up to equal 90 degrees. If they are complementary and we have alternate interior angles, then we should be able to find the complement. 90 minus 59 is 31. You can stop this video, pause it anytime you want to look at the pictures, but I'm going to continue on. In this diagram, we have that word complementary again. So if they're complementary, those two angles add up to equal 90 degrees. A piece plus a piece equals a whole. In this case, the piece plus the piece equals 90 degrees because they're complementary. On the next one, number 6, we have the keyword bisects, and that means it's cut into two equal parts. And if it's cut into two equal parts, then we can double those parts because they're equal. Also, don't forget that the whole is on the outside, and a piece plus a piece equals that whole. On number 7, we have vertical angles. Vertical angles are congruent, so we can set them equal to each other, solve for x. Once we have x, we can substitute it in to find the measure, and we go right back to that supplementary piece that we talked about earlier. Not difficult, but they do require 2 or 3 steps. We're only on question number 7. Don't get weak on me now. All right, these are just matching alternate interior angles. I don't want to make the picture all messy, but if you look over here on this side, I have the pairs for you, alternating one side or the other. And then you can see we have 2 pairs, 8 and 4 and 3 and 7. Alternating exterior are on the outside, and I don't know why I didn't put those in, but I'll put them in here now. We have angle 1, which is alternating a 5 on the outside. And then we have angle 2, which is alternating with 6 on the outside. And then I listed those other ones. Concentrate on consecutive interior and exterior. Those you don't know as well, and they do show up in the problems below. Again, this picture looks really ugly. Don't worry about how ugly it looks. It's a puzzle. We go around into pieces. Don't forget, we know things like alternating interior. We know vertical angles. We also have supplementary. Look at this picture carefully. It's not hard, but you do have to know which ones you set equal to each other and which ones you have to add together and set equal to 180. Again, alternate interior angles. You're moving them into the triangle again. Alternating interior. There's 180 degrees in 3 angles. Again, on this side, we have alternating interior here and here. This whole thing that we have 180 degrees inside of a triangle plays a big role. And we also have a big role that pieces can add up to equal 180 degrees because they are supplementary. If you're going to miss one, number 11 is the one you're going to miss because that's a rule that we don't use very often. That these angles are same side consecutive. They are not congruent. They are supplementary. You add them together and set them equal to 180. In order to do that, you have to first see that these are vertical angles, and that moves that 45 degrees into the picture so you can use it. Identify which transformations do not preserve distance. The only one that does not preserve distance is a dilation. Which of the following is not a rigid transformation? Again, that's dilation. Notice they're asking you this not once, but twice. I guarantee a dilation that is not a rigid transformation will be on the semester exam. Which construction is illustrated in the image below? Here we are copying an angle. From one point to the next, we have to measure it, and we can tell by this little tick mark here. We're copying an angle. You should have done constructions on Friday as a review. Copying a line segment, that one was pretty easy. Putting these in order, you have to be very, very careful. First, we decide where we're going to place the angle. Then we copy the angle. Then we mark the swish on the next line. Then we measure it. Then we copy it over. And finally, we finish with 2. Notice in this picture, 1, we start with the blank line. Number 2, we start with copying something of the original angle. Number 3, we have one little mark on the angle. 4, we have a mark and we're going back to the angle. 5, we have the mark with the tick mark. And finally, 6, we've copied exactly twice. Make sure the pictures make sense to you. This is in the middle of the angle. It is not copying an angle, it is bisecting an angle. If we have something in the middle and it's an angle, then it has to be an angle bisector because we're in the middle of the angle. Okay, again, we are in the middle, but we're not in the middle of an angle, we're in the middle of a line. It's got to be a perpendicular bisector, which will eventually give us the right angles. Notice they're giving you another group of pictures. Concentrate on these groups of pictures. 1, we swing an arc. 2, we reach to the center from the top. We reach to the center again. Finally, we have both of them cross and we come through the middle. Then they're giving you the steps for the perpendicular bisector. 1, we open our compass a little past halfway. 2, we swing above. We swing below. 3, we swing above and below from the other side. And 4, we cross. I guarantee there will be 2 of these on your exam. Read these below 21 very, very carefully. If 2 parallel lines are intersected by a transversal, then corresponding angles are not supplementary, they are congruent. 2 parallel lines intersected by a transversal, alternating exterior angles are congruent, correct. Alternate interiors are not complementary, they are congruent. Consecutive, these 2, the word consecutive will lead to supplementary. Consecutive implies supplementary. Consecutive, one right after the other. They're not congruent, they are supplementary. Every time you see consecutive, every time you see consecutive, think supplementary. Okay, this is a great question. We've done this in class. Point E is the midpoint of CD. It's the midpoint of CD because it's bisecting CD. That's true. The measure of BED, B-E-D, is 90 degrees. Yes, because it's perpendicular. AC is equal to AD from any point along the bisector to the ends are congruent. GC from any point along those pieces are congruent. But look at EC. EC is here to here. GC is here to here. Two different lines. One's on the bisector, one is not. One is part of the line that's being bisected. Not true. Never one, never all. This is a very, very important question. Make sure you're reading it carefully. And figures. If figures are congruent, then they are always similar. We did this in class before I left. Congruent figures are always similar. Congruent figures have a scale factor of 1. Thinking about the clothes in your bedroom, they're congruent and similar. They have the same size, they have the same shape, but they may be different colors. They are similar. If figures are similar, then they are always congruent. No, they are sometimes congruent. Not always, but sometimes. This is a very, very important question. You will see it. Know the difference. Congruent figures are always similar, but similar figures are only sometimes congruent. Select the transformations that will create an image that are similar to the pre-image. Similar to the pre-image. Dilations are similar. Rotations are congruent, therefore they are similar. On C, we have two different dilation numbers, 7 and 5. So they cannot be similar because they're not blowing up the image correctly. Translations, whether they move up and down or they move up and down, these shapes are similar. I can move a shape up, I can move a shape down, I can move a shape over. They are just translated, and that means that they are congruent. Therefore, if they're congruent, then they are similar. Last one I'm going to do in this video is 25. Complete the table with the correct algebraic expression. Again, you need to know these rules. Across the x, I know, change the y. Across the y, I know, change the x. Y equals X, just switch. Y equals negative X, switch and negate. Super easy. You just have to be able to do them. And I'm going to stop here. All right, guys. I hope you're doing well. We will do the rest tomorrow.